All right, welcome to session 4 of Pineview Parenting, where we are using the Adventures in Parenting curriculum, which is available online for free. You just have to Google it, and I think it's in a PDF format. This is session 4. The RPM3 stands for responding, preventing, and then 3 M's, monitoring, mentoring, and modeling. And today we are going to look into the preventing phase more in depth today. So the first R was responding to your child in an appropriate, it's hard to say, in an appropriate manner. So we want to respond, not react. React is that emotional reaction where we kind of fly off the handle sometimes, and usually we regret what we said or done. That happens all the time. Everyone does it, but we should work on responding. Do you remember what responding gives us? What's the key thing that responding gives us? Time. Very good. Gold star. Gold star. That's right. It gives us time, and that time allows our emotions to come down and our logic to come back up. Then we can really think about the situation. So that's what responding does. That lesson we've already done. It's just a quick little recap on the first one, but the one we're doing today is the P, which is preventing risky behaviors. Did I give you a handout? I did not. Here's your handout. There you are. We are looking at preventing risky behaviors or problems before they arise. What's the famous quote? Prevention is the best medicine. So if we can prevent issues with our kids, with situations, that obviously is better than trying to do damage control. So that is what we're talking about today, is preventing those behaviors or those problems, and those stem from risky behaviors. Obviously, a risk in and of itself, this thing about it in life in general, a risk by itself is not the problem. It's what risk can bring us. So it's kind of like, it's not the fall that kills us, but the sudden stop. So the fall is the risk. And so if you're seeing your kid, if you're seeing your family, seeing something going on that is risky, there has to be some risk in life. I mean, we can't go around, in padded suits and just trying to go through life and with no danger ever. I mean, there's going to be normal, natural risks. But when we can see our kids, and we're adults, so we know those risky behaviors better. That's why we're always like, choose your friends wisely, and it really matters who our kids hang around with, because if they're doing risky behaviors, they're going to be influenced. Our kids are going to be influenced. So we're going to try to prevent those risky behaviors and problems before they arise. So Krista, let me ask you, what were 3 ways that you baby-proofed your house when your kids were little?
Outlet covers.
What did you say?
Outlet covers.
Oh, outlet covers, right. Those little plastic things. Now, why would you do that?
So they don't stick things down.
Okay, because that's a risky behavior, right? And what's the danger in that? What could happen?
You get electrocuted.
They get electrocuted, I heard that 110 electricity is actually more dangerous than 220. The 220 has more of a pop.
Yeah.
But 110, I don't know, something about the frequency or something, it actually hurts your heart more. But don't quote me on that. I just heard that. That's unsubstantiated. But anyway, you put those little outlet covers in the outlet things, the little 110, so kid can't stick a fork or a knife in it or whatever, because they're right at kid level, What else would you do to baby proof?
Covers on the stove.
Sure,
so they can't turn them.
Right. Did you have a gas stove?
Yeah.
Yeah.
My daughter Haley was obsessed. She
before
we did that, she turned them on and threw a rag on top of it to watch catch on fire.
I grew up electric. The little, the great electric thing, not a glass top. We weren't that cool. But I grew up electric. But my friend had gas. And I like to go over to it and hear the tick, 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 tick. I like that tick, tick. Well, if they would have had stove covers, I wouldn't be able to do that. Never burned the house down or anything, but I vaguely remember something about someone saying, "What's that smell?" And I didn't know, because I didn't use gas.
Right,
I didn't know what that meant. I just like the tick, tick, tick. And so if I would have turned the tick, tick to where it didn't ignite, gas. And so that was a risky behavior. Yeah, for real. What's one more? What's one more baby proofing you would do at your house?
Cupboard locks.
Cupboard locks?
Yep.
Yeah. Are you talking those little white ones where
Yeah.
you can kind of open it a little and then you got to push it and it's like a
Yeah.
little hook thing?
Yeah.
So my kid, I could not keep them out of the fridge. And they would, when they were little, they would sneak over to the fridge. And our fridge was one of those where it's the long freezer on the side and then the long fridge. And so they open like this. And so they had the two kind of, longer handles to open them right. I couldn't, especially my boy, I could not, that one. He's right there. That one when he was like 4 or 5. He would sneak at night. My daughter too, actually. But see, she was hanging with her brother, so more risky behavior, right? So he would sneak out of his little bunk bed, and he'd go to the fridge and cinnamon rolls. He would, those store-bought pans of cinnamon rolls you can get? Well, we'd wake up the next morning, half the pan would be gone. And I'm like, what in the world? So I had to get that, with the 2 handles on the fridge, I had to get the clasp
Yeah,
locky thing.
We have a lock on ours right now. My daughter does because my 4-year-old grandson likes to throw eggs
Fun.
and
Okay.
butter.
Okay. 2 of the most messiest.
Yup, eggs and butter, so we have to lock. We have it's a combination lock, so you can't.
You
get
went
into
legit.
it. Yeah,
Gosh, it's one of those chain bike locks.
pretty much. It's steel cable that clicks in, and there's a combination on it, so you can get in the fridge. So
That's
baby
funny.
can't do it because. Yeah.
Gotcha. Right on. Why do you baby-proof your house? What are you trying to prevent?
Injuries, keep your kids safe.
Yeah, you're trying to give them a stable environment. You're trying to give them an environment where they can function and be happy and not fall into pain or risk or bad behavior or whatever you want to call it, unintentional. And some because they're kids, some maybe intentional. No, don't do that. Well, I'm gonna do it anyway. Believe me, with my son, when we tried to keep him out of cinnamon rolls, we told him, and he faced, consequences when he did, but, before we put the lock on. But
Right.
it just, but once you put the lock, it's amazing. Once we put the lock on, it eliminated that stress. The first couple times he tried, but once I can't get in there anymore. It just eliminated that stress. And the stress came down, he realized the boundary was serious, and it prevented that risky behavior, And butter, I tell you what, that could stain fabric and whatever
Throws it
else.
up the
And
ceiling.
it leaves the oil spots.
Yes.
How old is he?
He's 4. He has autism, so he still does some.
Yeah.
It's just one of his things he still likes to do. He'll go and crack every egg, get fistful of butter, and just throw them at the ceiling.
So here's where I'm at now with my phase of life. My kids are grown. And when I'm visiting someone that has little kids and they're doing something they really shouldn't be doing, whatever, I have earned the right now just to sit back and laugh. I'm like, that's amazing. I don't have to deal with it, but it's really funny. All right, very good. So we do baby-proof our homes because we want our little children to have a safe, secure environment. That we want them to be able to function. We want them to be able to do well without all these pitfalls or traps around. So us as the adults, we know if an electric socket is dangerous, or the fridge, they shouldn't get in that because there's stuff in there they shouldn't be getting. Chemical closets, junk like that, we keep the bleach up high, stuff like that. We do all those sorts of things because we're trying to keep our kids safe. Can we prevent every risky behavior? Of course not. Every toy, every stick, especially to a boy, that's going to turn into a weapon real quick. It's just what it is. I remember when I was a kid, I'd find these sticks. I'm like, this is a good sword. This is a stick, but all of a sudden it's a weapon. So we can't prevent every single risky behavior, but we sure can prevent some. So we talked about little kids a little bit, and as we go, we're talking more about adolescents. And there's still ways that we can adolescent-proof our homes, our households. We're going to talk about that in a minute, but unfortunately with adolescents, it's not as easy as putting a plug in a light outlet socket or locking the fridge. It's not that easy. It's a little more involved, and we're going to get into that. All right, so preventing problems. This is number 2 on your handout. Preventing problems includes a couple things. The first thing that it includes is spotting possible problems. Right? That may sound obvious, but you'd be amazed at how many parents, and dads are probably more guilty than moms, they don't even care to look. It's like they're just indifferent. It's like they go to work, they come home, they sit, they're watching TV, kids get out of my face. and the kid's over there doing something he shouldn't over in the corner with a sharp object, and oh, I didn't even realize. So we need to spot the possible problems before they even arise, and sometimes it just takes a little effort. So that's the first thing that preventing problems includes, is spotting those possible problems. And then the second one there, letter B, in the book, it says knowing how to work through the problems, but I actually changed it, and I like it to say learning how to work through those problems, because knowing is kind of like the final destination kind of thing. But even the issue with that is there's no cookie cutter kid. And so you can know how to deal with your kid with preventing problems, kid A, but then you do the same thing with kid B and it doesn't work. And so I don't really like the knowing. I think there's tools we can know, but you have to learn how to apply those tools differently to different situations, different kids. So anyway, so I like that letter B there, is learning how to work through those problems. Okay? All right, so let's talk about 3 ways that we can, there's more, but 3 ways that we can adolescent proof your family, your household. The first one is, it kind of goes along with that spotting possible problems, being actively involved. We need to be involved in our kids' lives. It's so important that whether you have your kid full-time, whether you're on the weekends, or if you do have them full-time, you need to know your kid. You need to know what they're doing. You be actively involved in their life. Know how they, or learn how they think and how they feel, how they act. I tell you what, my daughter, she just turned 17, so she's almost an adult. I've teased her that both my kids, when they were like 15 years old, they were ready to enter the world at 15. Now they weren't really, but I would kind of tease them about that. So my daughter is almost 18. She's real close to that. And so like with her, because I've lived with her whole life and I know her very well, I can tell when things aren't quite right. Now, especially for a girl and a dad, oftentimes they're not just going to come right out and say something. And boys are worse. Boys will really push especially their emotions in until they don't, if that makes sense. But our kids, even when there's something that's slightly off, we should know them well enough to say, or to realize in our minds, and maybe it'd be appropriate, maybe not, depending on the situation, to say something. But if you have opportunity, hey, you seem a little off. I've done that with my daughter, and she doesn't really like to talk so much about her feelings and that sort of thing. She will, but she won't on her own. I have to be the initiator, and that's okay. I mean, we're the parents, so sometimes we have to initiate those things. But so, I'll give you an example. There was a Sunday morning. We got up. She was in the bathroom. We're getting ready for church. Grandma was getting ready, that sort of thing. And in our house, the old farmhouse, we only have one bathroom. And so I went over to the door, and she'd been in there a while. And I don't nag at her. I'm not like, get out of the bathroom. But I knocked on the door and said, hey, Lakey, I said, we got to get going in a couple minutes, and a couple more people need to use the bathroom. People had to get in. But and she just, she barked at me. She snapped at me from on the other side of the door. And I thought, okay, that's different. I could have just passed it off as, she is grumpy. It's Sunday morning or whatever. But that was out of her character. But if I didn't know her well, I wouldn't have known that was kind of out of her character. So then she came out of the bathroom, and then she didn't say anything, and she didn't storm out, and she didn't slam any door. She just came out, went to her room, and up she went, just kind of quietly. But she didn't acknowledge me or Grandma. She just was getting on her way. And so that was unusual. So then we're in the car, and of course she's not really talking in the car. But again, not like overly obvious. But me as dad, I could just tell, okay, something's slightly off here. Grandma didn't notice. Grandma didn't realize anything was really going on. So when we got to church, Grandma walks slower than we do. She has a cane, and so I let her out of the car, and she started in. And then because she was going to take a little longer, I took a minute, and as Lakey got out of the car, I kind of stopped. And I didn't get right in front of her like, what's wrong with you? I just said, hey, you're a little off this morning. And she says, Yeah, yeah, I can tell. And she goes, well, what do you mean? And I told her what I had seen. I said, well, when I said that other people need to use the bathroom, you kind of barked at me. You kind of snapped at me. We call it sassy. You were pretty sassy at me. And she goes, oh. And then I said, then you didn't say anything. You came out, and then you've been quiet. You've been quiet, and the interactions that you have had have been slightly negative. So I didn't quite say it like that to a teenager, but that was my idea. And she goes, oh. She goes, I didn't really realize. And I said, okay, well, that's okay. And she goes, my bad. I guess that's how young people say they're sorry now, my bad. I said, okay, well, there's no problem. I said, I don't even need you to, say you're sorry or anything. I said, but I'm concerned about you because your behavior's a little off. Is there something wrong? And then her eyes welled up. And then she gets a little flush. And then it just so happened to be this drama with friends, and she was talking to friends online last night or whatever, the night before, and something went down with them, and that was bothering her, through the night, and then she was still thinking about it in the morning. But I would have had no clue if I wouldn't have been paying attention, or if I would have gotten upset at her when she kind of was sassy at me first thing in the morning. If I was, why you gotta be always sassy at me, rah, rah, rah. If I would have done that, that would have closed her down. And then I would not have had the opportunity to say later, hey, what's going on here, kind of thing. So I kind of saved it, and I used it as a caring thing instead of change your behavior. I want to know what was wrong. And I say all that because it's really important to be actively involved in our kids' lives so that when something's even slightly off, we can recognize it. Doesn't mean we come at them right away like, what's wrong with you? But we just keep it in mind, and if something happens, say, hey, here's the ways you're acting out of your character. What's going on? What's going on, that sort of thing. All right, so that's the first blank there, be actively involved. The second one is this. We need to, as parents, set realistic limits. Realistic limits. So these are boundaries. These are household rules. These are do's and don'ts of the house. And every house has them, whether everyone knows them or not. We all have rules. Some are unspoken, and people will learn what our unspoken rules are pretty quick when they cross them. It's just what it is. So even those households that are like, we're like a no rule house. I mean, good luck with that. But there are some families that do that. We're a no rule house. Just, we want everyone to be creative and independent, whatever. Even that kind of house, they have rules, but they may not really say it. But we, as good parents, we need to set those rules, set those realistic limits. And then the key is we need to enforce them consistently. That's, if you don't enforce these realistic limits consistently, you might as well not set the limits. If you don't enforce them consistently. And that goes with even like divorced households and stuff, but that's really hard because oftentimes you're not even in the same house. But if at all possible, if mom and dad, even if they're divorced and living in separate houses, if they can come together on basics, I think that would be, at least try, right? If you can come together on this basics, as basic as it's important that our kids do well in school. That's a pretty basic thing. Do you agree that our kids should do well in school, get appropriate grades, they go to school, have decent attendance, and they're not wreaking havoc in school? Can you agree with that, dad or mom? Yes, I can agree with that. Okay, great. So now that's a basic rule that we're both consistent in. Now they may be applied differently, and that may be okay, but they may be applied, but at least the basic rules are agreed on. And I know that can be difficult at times. That can be difficult even with a mom and a dad that are not divorced and even in the same house. They don't always agree. But if the mom and dad can be, or the guardians, whoever's the guardian of the kid, if they can be in agreement and can be consistent with the kid, I tell you what, that gives the kid stability and safety, and that really promotes their health and their success. It just really does. So setting realistic limits and then enforcing them consistently. And when I talk about like things work differently for different kids, that is very true. So consequences, for example. So it could be the same behavior, the same bad behavior for kid A, and they're going to face this consequence. Well, then kid B does something, the same thing or something, similar. Sometimes they can be the same consequence, especially if they're close in age. But obviously, you're not going to punish a 14-year-old the same as you do as a 4-year-old. It just doesn't work that way. But I would say that the severity of that punishment should be the same, if that makes sense. It should fit the crime, so to speak. But the way you punish a 14-year-old is different than the way you punish a 4-year-old. And even then, it can be different. Just depending on how the kid responds and reacts to consequences can be very different. Boys and girls are different, how they receive and understand consequences. So even if they're close in age, okay, child A is a boy and child B is a girl, you're probably going to punish them maybe similar, but tailored to what works. The general rule is when it comes to setting rules and then having to enforce them maybe with consequences is this: use the method of punishment that works. That's like the general rule. Kid A, okay, this works for kid A. Kid B, this works for kid B. Whatever the consequence is that works for that kid, that's what you use, if that makes sense. Okay? How much time have we got? Okay, we're doing good. All right. So 3 ways that you can adolescent proof your family or household. 1 is be actively involved. 2 is set realistic limits and then be consistent in those limits, which would include consequences, that sort of thing. And then this one, I think, gets missed quite a bit, especially with the guys, especially with the dads. We need to create healthy ways for our kids to express their emotions and themselves. So healthy ways that kids can express their emotions. What happens is if a child, especially an adolescent, it could be a boy or a girl, you can almost guarantee this: they're going to express their emotions. That's a given. They're going to express their emotions, whether you like it or not, or whether you really think about your emotions. When you have an emotion, you may choose to control it, right? You're not going to go flying off the handle at the drop of a hat, but you still feel it. And one way or another, you're going to express it. Now, it may be internal. You may be even bottling it up, so to speak. That is a form of dealing with, or I guess expressing your emotion. But oftentimes, especially for adolescents, they don't have a lot of those skills, the emotional control, the coping mechanisms, that sort of thing. They don't have those skills yet. They're learning those skills. So what'll happen is when they have an emotion, they're going to express it either actively or passively, explosively or implosively. Typically, girls express their emotions, adolescent girls especially, they express their emotions through their speech, through their voice, yelling, screaming, that sort of thing. That's typically what girls will do. A coping mechanism for young adolescents and even young girls oftentimes is taking a pillow and screaming into a pillow, just letting that verbal yelling out, and the pillow is kind of more for the parents, just to muffle it, like a muffler. When I used to do deer hunting, they actually sell these cough mufflers. Have you ever seen these things? It's like this little weird box thing, and if you want to go deer hunting or if you just need to be quiet for whatever, it's like this little plastic muffler thing, and you literally put it in your mouth and you cough, and it kind of like is a muffler. Anyway, so this is what it made me think of. So girls oftentimes will express their emotions through their mouth, through their voice. And so girls are, at a young age, are taught, scream into a pillow. Well, boys, that doesn't usually work. What are boys told to do with that pillow? Do you know?
Hit it.
Hit it. That's right.
Physical. Yep.
That's right. So girls, verbal, boys, physical. That's just how we're wired. It's how we're geared. And so a boy, if you're using the pillow illustration, you teach them, you hit the pillow. Rah, 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 rah. Girls, they may hit it, but it doesn't do the same thing. It's just we're wired differently. So we need to know how to teach our kids to express our emotions appropriately. Real life example from my life, my son, when he was real young, so like 5, 6 years old, and my daughter would have been like 3-ish because she's about 2 years younger than him. There was a time where he got angry at her. It was something like took his toy or something like that, and he hit her. He like, no, pop. I think he smacked her or something like that. Well, all of a sudden that was the first time he'd ever done that. That was kind of like a new thing, whatever. But obviously that's an inappropriate way to express his emotions. So of course, there was consequence for that, of course, but there's also teaching. Yes, it's okay for you to feel the emotion of anger. Anybody, and that's what we taught my son. When your sister steals a toy and you're upset about that, it's not being upset that's the problem. So what you do with it. And knowing how boys and girls are different, that was exactly what I taught him was, don't hit your sister, hit your pillow. Go in your room, even run in your room, and you can hit your mattress or hit your pillow, if you want to do it that way. Now, within reason, if he does it for like 20 minutes, okay, that's enough. But just to let out some initial anger or whatever, as a little child, that's appropriate. As he got older, it graduated from hitting your pillow and what I did when I was a teenager to chopping wood. Because that does two things. That's one, that's productive. And for a man, producing something or having an impact, so to speak, on the world gives you good feelings. This is how men are wired. Psychology has proven that men are more interested in things and girls are more interested in people. It's a relational thing. Doesn't mean that guys don't care about people, but psychology, our psyche, we're more interested in things. That's why there's more engineers that are men than women, and there's more nurses who are women than men. It's just how it is. So anyway, he graduated from hitting his pillow to chopping wood because it let out some physical aggression. He's still hitting something and technically breaking something, which kind of makes you feel good too, but it's in a productive way. And so I think we had a wood pile for a while, and we didn't even have a fireplace or anything. It was just to chop wood, and he would use that at times. He'd get frustrated with friends or school or mom or dad or whatever, and once in a while I'd look out the window and he'd be out there chopping wood. He's chopping stuff. I said River's letting off some steam, which was healthy for him. So it was a healthy way for him to express his emotions. Girls, one thing that they like to do sometimes is do self-talk, go for a walk and just talk. I mean, they're not talking to anybody, but they're still letting that out through this is adolescence, through their voice. So that would be another way. Do you have any ideas or any comments on healthy ways that even your kids can express emotions, like at home or whatever?
Oh, we like to usually have a punching bag. So.
Does he have a punching bag?
Yeah, well,
okay,
I don't think he does now.
Uh-huh.
I think it got broke when we was moving around.
Oh, gotcha. A hanging one or one of the stand ones with the base?
One that you put on the wall, like it was mounted on the wall.
Oh,
okay.
Bag. Oh, okay, right on. Yeah. Uh-huh.
He also will run or take a walk. And we just discussed, because I took that trauma-informed parenting class too. Nice. We just discussed having a safe space that's just his to go to.
Right on.
So he's got his new shed. So that's his space. I will come in if he needs to get away he can go out there.
Yeah, that's his fortress of solitude. Yeah. Superman had a fortress of solitude, and that's one thing I tell all men: you need a fortress of solitude. Yeah. Now, if they spend too much time out there, that's an issue too. Right. Then you're avoiding the world, right? Yeah. But yeah, a peace place. This is mine. I have it the way I want it. It's my zone. So, very good. No, that's excellent. Okay, very good. So that is another way. There's more ways, but that is another way that we can adolescent-proof our home. Be actively involved, set realistic limits with consistency, and then have healthy ways that our kids can express emotions. I think it's more dangerous to, what's the right word? I'll say it this way. Even expressing emotions in an unhealthy way can be damaging. And it depends on the severity of that action, whatever it is. You can get in some real trouble if you express an emotion in an unhealthy way, right? But psychologically speaking, it's better for your mind and your emotions to even express them in an unhealthy way than to not express them at all. I'm not saying that, we should allow abuse. That's not what I'm saying. Absolutely not. I'm not saying that we should just, well, he needs to express himself, so he's going to destroy something else. There goes another TV, which, we do have around here sometimes. I'm not saying that that's appropriate, but psychologically, the damage that can be done to our minds and our emotions if we always are pushing our kids down and saying, why are you always so angry? Or it's bad to be angry, or it's not okay to feel that feeling. That's more damaging than even them expressing it. Just yesterday, we had a boy here who got some bad news, and he was thinking of doing some stuff, because this is a good quote. I like this quote. Patterns of poor behavior originate from unprocessed pain. So like a dog bites because it's been hurt. Even a good dog will bite when it's been hurt. So I'll say that again for you. Patterns of poor behavior originate, if I get it right, originate from unprocessed pain. Yeah, there it is. So he had pain yesterday. This other boy had pain. He had got some bad news. So I can see he's in pain, and rightly so. I mean, it was bad news. So I didn't go up to him as a counselor and say, well, you shouldn't be in pain. I didn't say, oh, it's stupid for you to feel that way. No. The emotions had to be validated first. And so he's upset. I'm talking to him, and he's telling me, what happened and that sort of thing. And the first thing I said was, man, I'd be upset about that too. I'd be mad about that too. And I think it was just right there. It was like he had permission to feel. Maybe was a good way to say it. Now, what he's going to do with it, that's another story. But just the emotional part itself. So River, when your sister steals your toy, it's okay to be upset about that. No one should steal from you, right? Whether it's a little sister or a company when you're 40, right? So no one should steal from you. If you get broken into, your house, you feel very, what's the right word? What do you feel? Violated. Yeah, I want to say vulnerable, but no, you feel very, very violated. So the emotion there's really nothing wrong with the emotion itself. It's what we do with it. So that's why I talked to this boy yesterday about, I'd feel upset about that too. And I remember in the conversation as it went on a little bit, I asked him, I said, what are you going to do about it? Because we're all freedom to do something, whether you're in placement or a 4-year-old or a 40-year-old, we have a choice to do something. And he was going to do something. Now, that something could be nothing. That something could be just be depressed and sit on the couch. That's still doing something about the emotion. But he said, I'm thinking about running. Oof. So all of a sudden, now we know as logical adults, we're like, okay, you're a minor in placement. You got bad news. If you ran, and we're an open campus, there's no locked doors. If you ran, we're thinking immediately, all the additional consequences that are going to come, and it would not be good. So in a careful way, I kind of reminded him of that logic of the consequences. I reminded him of the immediate and the long-term consequences of doing something like that. And he had to have listened because he didn't do anything. He did just that. He got depressed. And again, really so. It was transient depression. It was just a feeling down about bad news. He said, well, I just, I want to go for a walk, and then I want to just go back to the house. I said, no problem. I said, let me get a staff, and they can go with you, and because he can't go by himself. You can go with you, go for a walk, whatever, around campus, and then go chill at the house. This is exactly what he did. And then I saw him this morning, and he was halfway smiling. So anyway, I say all that the emotion itself isn't a bad thing. It's what we do with it. And so we need to help our kids know how to express those emotions in a I almost said positive, but they're not always positive. They're just a healthy, safe way. That's a good way to say it. Okay. Lastly, today, sometimes with this stuff, we have to realize that we need help. And so There's listed in your book places you can go for help. And I want to talk about that for a minute. Remember that you're never alone. Sometimes parents feel like they're alone, and sometimes people or parents will isolate themselves because they're embarrassed. Like, my kid is, not doing well, or, he's having this behavior stuff, so that I feel that's a direct reflection on my parenting and on my identity. So sometimes parents don't go seeking help because of embarrassment. And I would just suggest or say this, what's worse, being a little bit embarrassed or having a kid that just is growing up to be a non-productive member of society? So do you want them to be successful or unsuccessful? And when they turn out to be an unsuccessful adult, you will regret not being willing to be a little embarrassed. And you'll find that people, if a parent asks for help, most people, they, even if they don't know how, they want to help. They want to help. They want to say, yeah, let's do this together. Let's find some help. Let's do something. It's rare that someone is going to just make you feel like trash because you asked for help, depending on who you ask, maybe. So let's talk about that. Where are some places you can go where you can ask for parenting help? Do you have a couple suggestions?
Well, a therapist or a counselor.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, right now with the probation department, because they're in Willie's life. So
Sure. Yeah.
I get
Yeah.
support and help from them.
Yeah. So here's some in your book. One is, and I'd be careful with this, other parents. If you see other parents, and you have to look at the results, and this is, I'll say this is kind of a life thing. It applies to parenting, but it actually applies to life. If there's someone that's trying to give you advice, but their life in that area is a mess themselves, I would maybe listen politely, but let it go in one ear and run out the other. I had a guy once, he was trying to tell me like the financial advice, and his finances were a train wreck. So I'm like, why am I going to listen to you if you can't get your own finances in line about my finances? Same thing with parenting. If your kids are running up the walls at Subway, why am I going to listen to you about parenting? You can't even handle your own kids, let alone mine. So be careful with that one. But there are some parents, and there's no perfect parent. That was the first thing we said in here when we started the course. There's no perfect parent. But there are some parents that got some things figured out. Maybe they've had similar situations. And, and maybe they talk to you and you only take away 20% of what they said. Fine. That's another 20% that may be helpful. But the other 80%, not so much. Doesn't fit me, right? We talked about doing what works. Maybe that worked for their kid, but it ain't going to work for mine, or vice versa, And so other parents are one form of help. Again, be careful with this one. Family members and relatives. I think if anyone's going to be the most judgmental, it's going to be other family members or family members or relatives. So if you want to avoid the judgy eyes or the awkward Thanksgivings, you may want to skip that one. Unless, you have a sister or someone kind of removed a little bit, or maybe even a parent, mom or dad, that does have some really good things to say. But I would just suggest being careful with that one. Again, friends, similar to other parents, friends, just be selective. Pediatricians, you mentioned counselors. So pediatricians, school people like nurses or even like principals, that sort of thing, counselors, social workers, agencies. The issue with all of that is they see or they interact with lots of kids. And now they have found things that work most of the time. And so there's some basic principles, like those basic rules that moms and dads, even if they're separated, they can agree on. There are some basics that you can apply. But getting down to the fine-tuned, detailed application, that really comes down to you and your kid. So I'd be careful hearing what an agency or a counselor or even a parenting class, I would be careful taking that and saying, okay, I need to do this exactly like I was taught and apply it exactly like I was told in my house. What happens is it doesn't always work. It has to be tailored to your house because you know your kid better than any counselor, any teacher does. I ran into that very issue with a dad. He was very, he was introverted. He was very methodical. He was kind of engineering kind of mindset. And what he did is he read a number of parenting books, which is not a bad thing to do. But I remember he was saying it's still not working. So what his solution was, well, I need to go back to those parenting books and see where I got their formula wrong, what they were teaching, and I need to correct that in my parenting in my house. Which there may have been some truth there, but I'm thinking, well, no, you take the basics, the principles of what you're being taught in a book or a parenting class, and you tailor it to your kid. Because no author, no counselor is going to know your kid like you do. It's just what it is. All books and all classes and counseling, all that is, it's just putting tools in your toolbox. That's all it is. But you have to take the toolbox and you have to take it home. Okay, I'm going to use this tool now. The counselor said to use this one, but I really think this one's better, and you use it. No, we could be wrong. Fine. We put it back. Okay, now I'll try this one or whatever. But the way that the dad was thinking was too mechanical. He was thinking like, okay, I have a car that's broken down, so if I follow the car manual, the repair manual to a T, I'll get the outcome I want and it'll be fixed. People are not cars. It doesn't work that way. But that's just how his mindset was. Anyway, so yeah, but pediatricians, school nurses, counselors, social workers, agencies, psychologists, psychiatrists, they all can be beneficial, but they're simply giving you tools. They can't raise your kid for you. They just can't. We wouldn't want them to anyway. Other places, like churches, community groups, support groups, stuff like that can be helpful as well. I find that my help that helps me the most is I go to my most trusted circles first, even if they may not be as qualified, so to speak, as others. I go to my most trusted first, because what that's going to do is they may not have the tools, but at least they can say, I genuinely care, I want to help, let's try to find some helps. And so now you have a trusted advocate to help you journey, instead of just a rigid, cold, distant teacher or counselor. You have someone that is actually in your life, if that makes sense. So anyway, all right, very good. Well, that is enough time for today. I don't want to go any further. We covered all the material. So next week we're going to talk about one of the first M's, which is monitoring. Monitoring our kids, which our kids will try to trip us up in the monitoring quite a bit. They don't want us to know everything going on. And with online stuff now, oh gosh, it's so hard. It's so hard because it used to be, I'm going to go to the park. Okay, what 3 kids are going to be there? You know, they are your friends. And then there could be a couple of the neighbor kids. So now the most I have to worry about is like 10 individuals, whatever, you know. But now, like with online stuff, it's hundreds and hundreds, and they're all over the world. Oh, I don't mean to be bleak, but but it's hard. It's hard. There's no easy though. There's no easy in parenting, but there's good for our efforts. So very good. All right. Well, thanks for being here. This was preventing, and we're going to do monitoring next week. This was session 4, and we'll do session 5 next week.